utility support.
SubhanAllah, that's amazing. May Allah bless and reward you and all the people who are involved in doing that, especially during this blessed month.
Alhamdulillah. We have 11 sisters and brothers that, may Allah bless them, have been a blessing, you know.
MashaAllah.
Aneelah, we, in the closing remarks, I mentioned some famous Afghans in our public square.
Oh, okay.
And I want to reach out to the Afghan community and how can we heal and unify. My Afghan story, you know, been married for 30 years, you know, and I have helped and settled, you know, so many refugees. And today I see them more professionals, doctors, engineers, and but still they are in social distancing, you know.
Yes.
So how can we engage them and unify and heal our ummah? You know, for me as an American Yemenis has been here for almost 130 years, since 1869. And here we are still struggling as a Yemeni community. You know, so the message is the same message for the, you know, the immigrant story. You know, how can we claim that narrative, the narrative, the love of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? You know, that yes, we have struggled, you know, as Muhajirin, as Ansar, but yet Muhammad created that mutual brotherhood. How can we heal the Afghani community, both, you know, the ethnic backgrounds, the tribal backgrounds, the different school of thought, to claim that narrative of the beautiful Afghanistan. At one time, it contributed, you know, to the success of South Asia.
Yeah, the success was reliant. Absolutely. Let's have that conversation, dear brother. Absolutely.
That will be the end one, you know.
Okay.
Closing remark.
Okay.
Inshallah. And then I have one surprise question for you. I'm not gonna mention.
I don't know any of the questions, so they're all going to be surprise for me. So, okay. But go ahead, Sister Jawaria. Let us know when we're ready to go.
Yeah,
Are you ready? Yeah, let's start, inshallah.
I'm on mute, could not unmute myself, so had to wait for some technical difficulties. But welcome, Sister Aneelah, and welcome everybody. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the first episode of the series, American Muslims in the Public Square, presented by Muslim Educational Trust in Portland, Oregon. And I'm very excited to be meeting with all of these Muslim voices, inshallah, throughout the series. And I was going through, Sister Aneelah, your profile, and mashallah, you are somebody that our youth and our community, Muslim community, is looking up to and is proud of. And that's the goal of Muslim Educational Trust. Since 1993, the purpose of Muslim Educational Trust is to bring awareness about Islam and unify the community into, so that we are portrayed, Muslims are portrayed as a positive and part of the community, inshallah. And this web series is one of, and today's episode is one of that, inshallah. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Brother Wajdi, who is the co-founder, the president, the director, the heart and soul of MET, and he will be moderating, co-hosting with me later with all the questions. And Sister Aneelah, you are you are the executive director for American Muslim Empowerment Network in Seattle, Washington. And also you are starting a new initiative. It's called, with the Muslim Association of Puget Sound.
Oh, well, amen. American Muslim Empowerment Network is at the Muslim Association of Puget Sound.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, these are amazing programs that you are working in. I see that you were part of the governing board member of the Faith Action Network, and also was part of Legal Clinic at the Muslim Community Resource Center. In I assume all of this is in Seattle.
Correct, the greater Seattle area.
Okay.
Yes.
And for those of the young ones who are joining us, Sister Aneelah Afzali actually graduated from Harvard Law School. So, you know, this is an inspiration for all of us Muslim youth, for all of us Muslims, that we are more than capable of getting to all of these great institutions of education and represent our faith, inshallah. Brother Wajdi, I'll give it to you from there.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Sister Aneelah, and everybody. Ramadan Mubarak for all of us. and may Allah bless us. And as Juwaira said, that we want to start this episode with you. You are a very successful story, Aneelah, and that's because of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the blessings of your mom and dad, and the sacrifices. Aneelah, for you as a refugee, before we go to the presentation, you came when you were 5 years old. You came, like many other people that came, to the shores of America, looking for safety and security and success. Some of us made it, and some of us are still struggling. What inspires you, Aneelah, to become the Aneelah today, the leader, the positive Muslimah, the positive lady, the positive human being in our public square?
Thank you so much, dear brother Wajdi, sister Jawaria, and the entire MET team for having me and for sponsoring this kind of series and all the other great good that you do there on the ground. I'm blessed to have met you all and visited MET, and I support and love what you all are doing. So thank you so much for that. As to your question, dear brother Wajdi, it's going to be covered in detail in my story, because really what I'm going to do is spend some time talking about my own journey, my personal journey, the spiritual transformation I had, the successes, and also some lessons learned. So I hope that I can cover it that way, if it's okay with you, dear brother. Yes? Okay. Can I go ahead and start? Okay, I'll go ahead and share this screen. Let's see if it works. Inshallah it will. Bismillah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. It's wonderful when technology works with us. So thank God. So assalamu alaikum and welcome to everybody who has joined us on this call as well. I would have loved to do this in person. Unfortunately, with coronavirus, we're not allowed to do that. So alhamdulillah, thanks and praise be to God for at least having this opportunity to do it online. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. That's the prayer of Moses, peace be upon him, before public speaking, that we Muslims always recite before we speak publicly. And Bismillah, in the name of God, the most merciful, most compassionate. I want to start by acknowledging that we are on indigenous land. I also want to say a specific and special Ramadan Mubarak to everybody who's watching, and I'm hoping that this blessed month has been going well for all of you so far. So as I said, I am going to share a bit about my own personal journey in life and the spiritual transformation and the leap of faith that I had from going from a practicing attorney to an activist doing the kind of work that I'm doing now, and then sharing some lessons and inspirations along the way, inshallah. So I want to start by asking everybody, let's see if this works, to think about the biggest risk you've ever taken in your life. For some, it may be skydiving or some other high adrenaline activity. For others, perhaps it's marrying your spouse or divorcing. For many of our parents, including my own, it was fleeing a country in search of a better future for their children. Now, I myself, I've certainly done my share of high adrenaline activities. Let's see if this works. Like, here we go, parasailing in Puerto Vallarta, ziplining in Costa Rica, shark cage diving in South Africa, taking a photo in front of a real rhino, snowboarding in Iceland, sandboarding in the Namibian desert, and more. Now, I will admit that those top 3 photos that you can hopefully see are not actually me doing it. I just didn't have any pics of me doing it, but I did actually do those activities. So at this point, I wanted to just share those at least. And if any of those pictures impress you, especially that last one in any way, let me show you how I basically ate it right after that. This plays.
I like this one, and I like the one before too, the skiing one.
Okay, good. Well, watch this one. See if you like this. I hope you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part didn't go so well, but hey, at least I got back up. I think that's the important thing here. I've also taken a lot of just stupid risks in my life that I can reflect back on now and be so grateful that God was protecting me, because my life could have been drastically different. And I'm sure all of us have decisions like that we may have made throughout our lives. But I will say that all of this pales in comparison to the biggest risk that I've taken. My leap of faith when I left my legal career and a very comfortable salary in pursuit of an uncertain future of knowledge and activism after having made it in this world. Now, my friends and my family, they all had concerns about my decision to leave my legal career. And they asked me, what are you going to do? And the truth is, I didn't know. I had worked so hard my whole life, and becoming a lawyer was something even beyond my dreams that I had been able to achieve, all thanks and praise be to God. You see, I was 2 years old when my family fled the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And we lived for 3 years in Germany as refugees before immigrating to the US when I was 5 years old, because my dad's side of the family lived here. We struggled to survive and make ends meet. And we started from the bottom more than once. And my family did all kinds of menial labor just to make it in this country. When I was in middle school, my family opened a video store, and from that point on, we had one or more mom and pop shops where all my family members worked, regardless of age. And I have to say, we should all appreciate our parents if they are still alive today, and pray for them if they are not, because they are
Happy Mother's Day, Aneelah, for your mom and everybody, all the mothers.
Yes, happy Mother's Day for sure to all the mothers out there. There's even a Quranic verse about how important it is to treat our parents well. So I want to make sure I keep that on screen there for a bit. So besides a strong work ethic, education was also important to my family. But there was what seemed like this insurmountable socioeconomic challenges on my path to college, along with general sexism and other concerns. Fortunately for me, because my older siblings, who I love and I'm so grateful for, because they did most of the hard labor with my parents growing up, and because I did really well in school, I was able to even think about college. But I remember when I first started looking at college catalogs, somebody saw me and he just scoffed at me, saying, "You're never going to go to college," because no one in my family had before. I'm so glad that he was wrong. With the help of scholarships, I was blessed to be the first in my family to be able to get a college degree, and fortunately, not the last, as my younger sister and younger brother also went on to college, and my younger sister even continued on to med school. But we all face those kinds of negative comments, even from the people we love. We have to believe that we can, even when others say we can't. And I'll also add that so many, there we go. I'll also add that so many other things in my life pointed me towards law school. I loved logic games and mock trials. I played a lawyer in high school in a play. I handled the legal paperwork for my parents' mom and pop shops in middle school, and for my family members' divorce in high school. I tried to defend my dad in court on a speeding ticket that we thought was based on racial profiling when I was in 7th grade. I love to ask questions and advocate my position, or as some would say, argue. But despite all of this, I never even dreamed of going to law school growing up because I didn't know any lawyers. And people who looked like me, who came from my background, they didn't go to law school. College seemed like a big enough dream, a far away enough dream in and of itself. And when I did finally, entertain the possibility of going to law school, I was still in so much disbelief about it that I applied to 18 different schools, not believing that I would get in. Even though in retrospect, I know I was a strong candidate with a high GPA and LSAT and significant leadership activities and a compelling personal narrative. Fortunately, I did make it to the law schools I applied to, and I did choose Harvard, where I got my law degree and then continued into the legal world. And I definitely struggled a lot along the way. I had to work twice as hard as others, or more, it seemed, as some of the stuff didn't come naturally to me. I often felt like I didn't belong, that I had somehow gotten into some exclusive club and someone was going to figure out that I was a fraud. I dealt with microaggressions and general racism, including people assuming that I got into Harvard for reasons other than merit. I faced strong emotional attacks because of some of my activism. And after 9/11, the racism and Islamophobia became even more apparent and blatant. I also faced sexism in a very male-dominated legal profession and the corporate world. Hashtag me too. And in response to all of this, I didn't just work hard, but worked extra hard to prove myself. You have to put in the time and hard work to achieve your dreams. And I did. I pushed myself more and more to be extra prepared for everything, to prove that I belonged, and to meet the high standards that I set for myself. Hard work, regular all-nighters, and prayers got me through. And part of what gave me that drive to keep pushing so hard was actually remembering my roots, remembering my family and where we were sort of, just even a decade ago or so, remembering how blessed I was to even have such an opportunity to start out as a refugee, an immigrant, and to make it to a top university, and then partner at a law firm, and then general counsel of a healthcare IT company. And I'm not going to lie, I felt enormous pride in those accomplishments. But something was missing at the top of that ladder of worldly success. So I sought something deeper, something more meaningful. And I then experienced a spiritual transformation. Now, in terms of faith, like many of you that might be watching, I was born Muslim and raised with Islamic teachings like doing good, helping others, mercy, compassion. My mother has always been a devout, practicing Muslim her whole life, mashallah. But my dad was more of what we call a Ramadan Muslim, a practicing Muslim during the month of Ramadan only. And as kids, we gravitated to what was easier, so we also became Ramadan Muslims. I personally chose Islam myself in college after a lot of research and a comparative religions course. And to the surprise of many, one of the main reasons why I personally chose Islam is because of the empowerment of women that I found in the Quran. I also defended and explained Islam in college because there was so much misinformation and ignorance about Islam even then. And while I chose Islam at that time with my mind, faith had not yet really moved my heart. I continued to be just a Ramadan Muslim unless I needed something. Then I would definitely pray to God for help. But as I moved through college, law school, and then up the corporate ladder, I moved further and further away from the teachings of Islam. And this is how Satan works. He doesn't come at once and get you from point A to, point Z. He does these tiny increments that you don't even notice. And then all of a sudden you look back at your life and you're like, whoa, I was at point A before and now I'm at point, W. Like that's how it happens. It doesn't all happen at once. But the one thing I did have going for me, thank God, was Ramadan. That no matter what, I always still fasted and was a practicing Muslim during the month of Ramadan. And that was my spiritual connection that stayed true throughout, the journey of life that I experienced. And in Ramadan 2012, this is the year that I had this transformation. As I was searching for deeper meaning during that year, I finally read the Quran cover to cover, and it shook me to my core. I realized that I had been dedicating all my time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears for only the transitory life of this world, which was like pouring my everything into just a Monopoly game. And winning at Monopoly, that's not real success. God allowed me to get to the top of the worldly ladder of success to win that Monopoly game that I was so desperate to win in order to recognize the more significant ladder of real success in life. And that spiritual transformation allowed me to take my leap of faith, to leave my legal career in 2013 and pursue knowledge and service, two things that Islam emphasizes so strongly. Now, this is not to suggest that Islam is against worldly success. It's not. But I was personally in a spiritually toxic environment with many unhealthy habits and friends and relationships that were not positive for my spiritual growth. They were holding me back, and I needed that clean break to make that jump from who I was to who I wanted to be. And during this time, I also went on a juice cleanse to Costa Rica with my little brother, who by that time had become an atheist and then even an agnostic. And we had many real discussions about life and faith. And that was actually the beginning of his exploration, his spiritual journey, and his return to the faith as well. Alhamdulillah. Thanks and praise be to God.
Back, big shout to Qusay.
Yes, big shout out to Qais, mashallah.
Yeah.
Yes, Qais. I witnessed the positive and beautiful transformation in him as well as a result of his leap of faith, and also on the rest of my family. I had the huge blessing of being able to do the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca with my parents in 2013, which was a spiritual high of my life. And alhamdulillah, since coming back, my dad has also been a fully practicing Muslim, not just a Ramadan Muslim, which is what I was myself before too. But by fall of 2016, for 3 years, I've been out of my legal career. I was now at a crossroads. I had been volunteering and working on educating people about Islam, exposing the Islamophobia industry, and building bridges of understanding and unity at a time when Islamophobia was increasing and millions of dollars were being spent to demonize Islam and Muslims in our country. And of course, we had the election and the increase in hate crimes that followed, including even 2 attacks in less than a month at the mosque that I was attending, the Muslim Association of Puget Sound, or MAPS. So the work was more critical than ever, and I was passionate about the cause, but my savings had run out, and I even had to borrow money from my sister. So I started interviewing for legal positions, thinking that I had to return to the legal world. And that's when the MAPS leadership, they approached me and asked about my future plans. I told them about this vision I had for an organization that I would call AMEN, American Muslim Empowerment Network, that would do education work, engagement, coalition building, media change, and empowerment work. And I wanted to lead this kind of organization, but I thought our community really needed this, but it wasn't financially viable. Well, the MAPS leaders, they loved the idea, and they told me to launch AMEN through MAPS and that they would hire me. So I was able to actually continue some of the work that I'd been doing and pursue my vision and get paid for it. Like, I could not have planned it better myself. The pieces of the puzzle of my life fell right into place, just as it says on the screen here, that God has a puzzle, has a plan for us. And they just fit together so beautifully sometimes that we only see later in life. And I feel now so blessed to work on the front lines of advocacy work, fulfilling the mandate of justice in Islam and building community and coalitions to advocate for justice together, working to bring positive change to the world by promoting facts over fiction, love over hate, and faith over fear, locally and even nationally. I'm living out my faith values, and that's what being Muslim in America means to me. It means being proud as both an American and a Muslim, recognizing that there is no conflict between the two unless you create it or unless we allow haters to create that kind of conflict. Now, that does not mean that we ignore a history of a lot of wrong that our country has done. We know that that's a fact, especially to our Black and brown siblings. At the same time, recognizing the potential that our country has and the role that each one of us can play in leading our country to a better place. And I have to also say that as rewarding as this work may be, it is all consuming in a lot of ways. And there's some real risk too. Being in public in spaces like this was the Act for America hate rally. Being in spaces like this and having haters even come up to you, where I was doing an Ask a Muslim booth. Being in the public and outspoken as a proud American Muslim woman, especially one wearing a head covering, which I started wearing about 5 years ago, it's not always easy. I've had people discount what I have to say or get scared of me simply because of my head covering, or drive by and yell obscenities at me. I even made it on an anti-Muslim website by one of the biggest Islamophobes in our country after a national Faith Over Fear conference that I helped organize. And I further individually know people, multiple people who have personally been victims of anti-Muslim hate crimes, like a friend whose father-in-law was viciously attacked and killed with a shovel here in Portland, actually, while down in prayer in his own backyard. May he rest in peace. And of course, here in Oregon, we also have the heroes, the Islamophobic and racist incident on the MAX train that led to the horrific attack on Micah Fletcher and the death of 2 others, 2 angels, Talisha Namkai Meche and Ricky Bess. May all these fallen heroes rest in power and reach the highest station of paradise. Amin. I actually have met the family at MET, I remember this, meeting the family members of these heroes at MET. And, you know, because of incidents like these, my mom actually cries out of concern for my safety. And that breaks my heart. But the love for the community and the cause and the need for this kind of activism is far too great. So it's worth the risk. We need to have the courage of our convictions and ultimately have faith and trust in Allah, in God. Now, of course, that doesn't make it any easier to hear my mom cry on the phone, but I do count my blessings every day. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do what I do. We all need to maintain our attitude of gratitude at all times because we are blessed far more than we know. And there is even this quote in the Quran where God tells us that if we are grateful, we will be increased in everything, in anything good. So my faith is actually what gives me hope and optimism and strength. And we all should know how blessed we are to have that gift of faith, that gift of guidance that it took me a long time to get to throughout my life. I also have to say that as bad as things may be right now, and I tell this to people all the time, it is an amazing time to be alive and an incredible time to be American Muslims. Never in my lifetime have I felt that what I say and do and what all of you say and do can have as great an impact as it can today. We are writing history with our words and our actions or inactions. And we each have the incredible opportunity and the potential to make a real difference in the future soul and direction of our country on the issues of Islamophobia and so much more. Because all of our various struggles for justice, they are interconnected. I will also add that just because I took a leap of faith out of my legal career does not mean that I'm saying all of you should leave your professional pursuits. You know, you absolutely should not, but just believe that you can if you want to. And the more important message, at least for me, was to make sure I place God at the center of my life. Because with God on my side, I can achieve anything. But without God, our pursuits can be meaningless. So I want you to also find your true calling, your passion in life, something that fires you up, and bring that passion to whatever you do. Even if you don't have the passion right now for what you may be doing in life, find ways to do something passionate on a regular basis, whether it's activism, volunteering, mentoring, poetry, art, whatever it may be. Because right now the world needs you. Our country, the world, is in desperate need of your efforts, your talents, your contributions, your passion, your vision, your leadership. You might not be able to change the whole world or help everyone, but you can make a world of difference for the individuals you do help, the causes you do care about, and the actions that you do take. And if you ever decide to take a leap of faith, who knows where you may land? Maybe you will even learn to fly. Whether your leap is, returning to your faith like I did, or a new journey following your passion and your calling, I hope you have complete faith and trust in God when you pursue those kinds of things with the right intention. And if you don't leave your professional pursuits, that's fantastic as well, because we need people to succeed as politicians, lawyers, doctors, teachers, journalists, historians, and more, to be the leaders in our cities, counties, states, and our nation. We should all work really hard to make it to the top of our professions or to the top of our careers, whatever it may be. But also remember always to give back to the community, help others. Do not forget those in need. Do not forget your own roots. Do not forget that all of the blessings that we have in life could be taken from us at any moment. Our own increase in salary should increase our giving standards, not our living standards necessarily, as the saying goes. If you can't afford to give money, especially if you're young, give of your time right now. You have more time now than you probably ever will in your life. And the money and the time that you give to help others will come back and benefit you in more ways than you can imagine. And I know that we all can give more money and time, service. And what a beautiful time with the month of Ramadan, this blessed time where good deeds are multiplied. What a wonderful time to be able to give back. And especially in the middle of a crisis, this pandemic, what an opportune time to step up and serve the wider community. Do what we can, whether it's supporting organizations on the ground that are feeding the hungry, for instance, or whatever other way we can, whether it's donating food ourselves to food banks or going out there and serving those, even while we may be fasting ourselves. Make sure you also wake up and realize your purpose in life before it's too late. Because from my perspective, our whole point here on earth is to collect good deeds, to do good, to love and worship our Creator, and also to love and serve His creation, our neighbors, love them as ourselves. Because at the end of the day, life is short. Our time here on earth, it's short. We all already, I'm sure, know somebody who's passed away well before their time. Our time here on earth is a precious gift, and it's an opportunity. So what are we doing with that opportunity? We need to evaluate our priorities, our purpose, and make sure we fulfill our potential. If material success and just having fun are our main goals, we may get to the top of that ladder of success and find it entirely devoid of meaning and fulfillment. And we may have wasted our lives. And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't go up that ladder or that we shouldn't enjoy material success. It's not that you shouldn't own things in this world, even nice things, but that nothing should own you. As Imam Ali beautifully said, may God be pleased with him, that detachment is not that you should own nothing, but that nothing should own you. That's an important message to remember. And whatever our journeys may be, wherever our paths lead us, we all will face adversities. The hardships are part of this life, because this life is not paradise where it's carefree and toil-free and problem-free. We face hardships, and those hardships could be creating us to be the better people in this world. And the true question of those hardships is, what are we doing in response to the suffering of the world? Those hardships are intended to build character and resilience. May God help the suffering of anybody around the world, including any of us. But know that with the hardship, I should say, comes ease, as God tells us in the Quran, that with the hardship comes ease. And we can see that in the people who step up to help us during those times of hardships. We can see that in the way that we grow as human beings at times because of those hardships. And we can see it specifically in the fact that at those times of hardships are often when many of us turn to God. So that beautiful return to our faith, or returning to God and connecting to God, or building that relationship with God, can be a huge blessing in and of itself. So I'm going to go ahead and end with a story from an unknown author. And this is there was a young woman who complained to her mom about life and how hard things were. She was tired of struggling and she wanted to give up. So her mom boiled 3 pots of water. In the first one, she put carrots. In the second one, she put eggs. And in the last, ground coffee beans. After they boiled, she asked her daughter to feel the carrots and the hard-boiled eggs and to taste the coffee. Her mother explained that each of these faced the same adversity, boiling water, but they reacted differently. The carrot went in strong, hard, and unrelenting, but in the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg had been fragile, its thin outer shell protecting its liquid interior, but in the boiling water, its insides hardened. The ground coffee beans, they were unique though. After they were in the boiling water, they changed the water. Which one are you? The mother asked. When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? And that's what I ask of each of you. Are you the carrot that seems strong but loses strength in adversity? Or are you the egg that starts fragile, but with adversity you toughen up? Or are you the coffee bean, which transforms the hot water, the very circumstance that brings it pain and adversity? If you're like the coffee bean, when things are bad, you get better and change yourself and the situation around you. You rise above your circumstances, the trials, the tribulations. You turn problems into opportunities, like taking lemons and making lemonade. Our response in the face of adversity defines us. It will determine the kind of person we are, the kind of person we become, and the kind of success and impact that we can have on the people and the environment around us. The true leaders who change the world will use the challenging times like the ones that we live in order to transform themselves and others. They will turn, their anger and frustration into something positive and creative. That's what I hope to do. That's what I hope you do too. So for all my fellow coffee beans and coffee lovers out there like myself, even when it's so hard with Ramadan of not having our coffee, I say get out and change the world. Take your leap of faith, or otherwise pursue your passions, your calling, make a difference, and may you have the strength, courage, conviction, and commitment to truly transform the world. And may God guide you in that journey as well, always to what's good and what's right and pure. So thank you so very much to each of you for having me and for listening to my story. And if I said anything good or beneficial, alhamdulillah, all thanks and praise be to God. And may Allah forgive me for any of my shortcomings.
I mean, thank you so much, Sister Aneelah. This was, your story is compelling and inspiring to all, not just the Muslim community, but everybody who is listening to your talk right now. Brother Wajdi, would you like to start, ask a question, or can I just quickly jump in and ask?
Please go ahead and jump,
Oh, actually, I do see that we do have a question.
Before we go to the questions and answers, I want just Aneelah to, I want to bring her back to home, Portland, Oregon. And Aneelah, can you tell us your story in Portland, please? You went to our public schools here in Portland, Oregon, and you engaged, in several ways, Can you tell us your story, your family story here in Portland?
Yeah, we came to Portland when I was in middle school, and was that right? I had to think about it. Yes. I went to high school there in Portland, Southeast Portland. And alhamdulillah, it was a public school, but I found opportunities or ways, including through an honors program that existed there called the Research Scholars Program, and really did my part to try to get engaged and involved in school as much as I can, and really focus on my studies. And the guidance counselors from that school really gave me the inspiration or the push, the motivation that I needed to really seriously consider college, which I'm so grateful to them for. It allowed me to start along the journey of going on to college and continuing with my educations thereafter. So it did start in Portland. That's where our mom and pop shops were, our video stores and more. That's where my parents returned to. My parents, actually, it's funny, I went to college in Eugene, Oregon, University of Oregon. So I'm a proud duck. But my parents, they didn't want me to go too far away for college, which is why I had stayed in state. But as soon as I started in college, they ended up moving out of state. They ended up moving up to Yakima, Washington. So that was a fun story. But alhamdulillah, they've come back now. They now live in Portland, Oregon again, Gresham actually. And I visit them as much as I can, and it's certainly not often enough. But may Allah bless and reward them.
Alhamdulillah. And I'm very thankful to that, and I'm very thankful to your story, and we are all thankful. For those of us in Portland, Aneelah went to Marshall High School in Southeast, 91st in Southeast Portland. Yes. Aneelah, how was the community at that time, the Muslim community growing up, in Portland?
Yeah, it was, honestly, it was non-existent for me. And what I mean by that is I didn't know any other Muslims in my high school. And Islam, or at least that I was aware of. And Islam was not a big part of our life, like I said, outside of Ramadan, and outside of the teachings that were inculcated in me and my siblings, the good teachings of Islam. But at the same time, there was no real Muslim community that we were a part of, because my family did not go to the mosque. We were not affiliated with a mosque. We did not have that kind of connection to the Muslim community. And there really wasn't a Muslim community that was visible that I was part of in any way.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Aneelah,
so follow up with that. So going to school in Eugene, or college in Eugene, I assume you were also one of the very few Muslims at that time. How was that experience? And then applying to law school, and especially to Harvard. What were your feelings when you were applying to these Ivy League schools and thinking what, because again, a lot of youth is watching this, and I want them to be confident in them that through your story.
Yeah, so in college was where I personally, as I mentioned in my story, that's where I did my own analysis. I pursued my own sort of questions that I had about faith and religion and Islam, and I chose Islam for myself. And part of what I was doing at that time, because as you recognize, there were not a lot of Muslims there in my college either, more than high school, but certainly not enough to really see a visible community that I could notice. I was actually out there defending Islam. People were making all kinds of claims and allegations and falsehoods and lies. That has increased in a lot of ways now with an entire Islamophobia industry that spreads a message of false information and conspiracy theories and more. But even back then, because you have to remember that our country, unfortunately, has been involved in so many wars and attacks in the Middle East. So there has been a consistent, dehumanization of Muslims, because you have to dehumanize a people before you can go and attack and kill them with these huge bombs. Sending the mother of all bombs to places like Afghanistan, you can't do that unless you have dehumanized the people to some extent. So Muslims were and are continue to be dehumanized in certain ways. And while I was in college, I was experiencing some of that because in the media and in mainstream culture and society, people were having conversations and talking about Islam and Muslims in a way that was really spreading a false narrative. And one thing that I remember in particular was around our actions in Afghanistan, and this was also in law school, I should say, but specifically the kind of mindset, and this is part of liberal Islamophobia that we talk about. There's different kinds of Islamophobia, and the liberal form of Islamophobia is people who are liberal, who are Democrats, who are not, people who hate Muslims, or who there are people who will condemn hate crimes against Muslims, and they will condemn, the blatant attacks of Muslims or Islam by the Islamophobia industry, but yet they will support certain policies, or they will believe certain viewpoints, particularly about women and Islam, that allows for some of the other forms of hate and Islamophobia to perpetuate. And they don't even realize that that's what they may be doing. So there was a lot of liberal Islamophobia that I was facing both in college and in law school, these places that are considered liberal places, where people had very, wrong notions about Islam and women in particular. So I was often finding myself, particularly on that point, of talking about Islam and what it actually teaches about women's rights, and how I actually personally chose Islam. One of the main reasons was because of the empowerment that I found, and that so many others find, in reading the Quran, in pursuing Islam as a way of life. So there was a lot of defending of the faith, I would say, that I was doing in college, and that was the experience there. But then with applying to law schools, again, for me, given my background, I didn't believe I could do it. I didn't believe it was a path for me. I didn't even think about law school until like my junior year in college. I didn't think about anything beyond college, because college itself seemed like such a huge accomplishment and gift and dream in and of itself. I didn't allow myself to think beyond that, but thank God I did. And when I did, like I said, because I was so much in doubt that I would actually get in, I was like, I got to cast as wide a net as possible. I got to apply everywhere that I possibly can. And, these law school applications are not easy. Each one takes time. And I applied to 18 different schools because, again, I was like, is anywhere going to even accept me? Because I was doubting myself instead of having faith and confidence in myself and belief that God ultimately has a path defined for us already, right? So for me, applying to those schools was really about trying to make sure I get some kind of positive response. And alhamdulillah, thank God, I did get a positive response, including from places like Harvard. So I encourage everyone, especially the youth, to not, cut yourself short, really to think big, to go and pursue it. Even if you don't get it, at least consider yourself worthy of applying to places like that. Consider yourself worthy of, pursuing whatever your highest calling may be, and make sure you constantly build out your dreams bigger and bigger, and not confine yourself by your own self-doubts or your own, insecurities or uncertainties or anything else like that, because God is the opener of all doors, and he can open doors that you may not have ever even imagined.
Yeah, thank you. So after law school, you started corporate world, and you were working all these, I assume, very fast-paced law jobs. But once you moved away from, and you start looking within yourself to start working with MAPS Amen, what were some of the hindrances or that you experienced that you did not experience as a corporate lawyer?
Well, I was putting myself out there a lot more in public, in the sort of public space, which was new because as a lawyer, you really are representing a company or representing a client, and your public profile is not as large. So putting myself out there publicly was something new. And I will also add, and this surprises a lot of people oftentimes, but for me, I'm an introvert. I am not an extrovert. I don't like being out there in public. In fact, if it was up to me, I would do what we're doing right now with quarantine all the time, right? Like that isolation, just be alone on my own. Like I love that. So it's not in my nature to go out there and be in the public the way that I am. So that was something absolutely new to me in that sense. And it has been a struggle because, like I said, it's not my nature. But I also understand that when God gives us certain talents or gives us certain gifts, we need to show appreciation for those gifts. And part of it is actually using those gifts in a way to do good. And if we say, you know what, I might have this talent, but I'm not going to put it to use because, I'd rather be more comfortable just being at home, that's actually a way of showing disrespect and ingratitude to that gift or that blessing. So for me, that was one of the big struggles, was actually putting myself out there. I'll also add that coming sort of to the faith the way that I had, and getting connected with a religious community, alhamdulillah, we have places like MET, and MAPS for that matter, but not all religious places may be as open or willing to accommodate newbies, let's say, right? Or they may not be they might not have the infrastructure to be able to onboard new people or like welcome people to the faith and help guide them in the process. So that can also be a struggle. I know for me, sort of, I wanted to learn as much as possible. I'm so glad that I did the Quran intensive program with Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jainda, and I've continued on my own sort of pursuing knowledge, but I'm still a seeker of knowledge. And the more I learn about Islam, the more I realize how little I know. And hopefully in my lifetime, I'll have the chance to learn even more. But I think that was also a struggle, was struggling to reconcile and understand my faith better, because this is something that I want to tell you also about, more learning about Islam from my experience, at least. When I first started reading the Quran, I had a lot of concerns, right? And I'm going to say that, and that's a little bit bold to say, and it's a little wrong to say, but like, I'm reading the Quran and I was coming across passages that I had a difficult time understanding, because I had this worldview of God as the most compassionate, the most merciful, the most just, all these beautiful 99 names of God that we know of. But yet I'm reading passages that didn't seem to, at least for me at that time, didn't seem to align with that vision of God. So what I actually did, and I encourage others to do this too, I actually took Post-its and put Post-its on all the places that I had, concerns or issues with certain Quranic passages. And I will tell you that as I've explored Islam more, as I've dug deeper and learned more, the more I've learned, those little Post-its, before there were like, let's say 25, 30 of them, slowly they've been taken off and off and off and off. And I found the profound beauty and the way that the different aspects of the Quran, they actually magnify, God's majesty. They reveal and reflect constantly the beautiful teachings of compassion and mercy and justice. And now when I read the Quran, I'm like, subhanallah, like, glory be to God, that like, how could anybody pick up this book and read something bad into it? So the way that I see it now is that reading the Quran, or any religious scripture for that matter, it really is kind of like a mirror. Like it's a reflection of your own heart. And the more you work on purifying your heart, the more beauty and majesty you will find in the religious scripture.
Yes, and pursuit of knowledge, again, is so important in Islam. It's rooted in Islam. And, I always tell my students, do not think that you will stop after high school or college or grad school. Continue on pursuing knowledge, because pursuit of knowledge, it's actually pursuit of happiness. Knowledge gives you happiness. And I see Brother Wajdi actually took out his Quran and he's showing all his post-its. And when we study our classes, we put post-it notes in our biology books and our chemistry books or law books, right? So that we remember or we go back to this. Why not do that with Quran as well? Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I have just a follow-up, if you don't mind, Joyria. Aneelah, when we look, thanks for bringing the post-it notes. Mine is not doubtful ones, but more of inquiry, and I found it, more positive, to look into the doubtful matters that Islamophobes create, around the Quran and around Islam. Aneelah, when we look into the golden age of Islamic civilization, we come across one of the greatest scholar by name of Ibn Khaldun. He wrote the introduction to the science of sociology and cultural anthropology. Ibn Khaldun, in his theory of asabiya, the positive loyalty. In today public square, Aneelah, who you are loyal to, that have the most person that you are grateful to, or persons that have shaped you, and you are grateful and debt to them all your life. Because today a lot of parents today, they complain about our youth. Our youth, and American Muslim youth, is not necessarily grateful, is not necessarily thankful, is not necessarily loyal to his family, to his the institution that shaped him, or the center. What, can you elaborate more, about your loyalty and your gratitude and your asabiya, your positive affiliation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of people. I would start, of course, right away after thanking God, is thanking my parents and recognizing the sacrifices that they went through and the opportunities that they created for me. I'm forever grateful for that, and for the lessons and values that they inculcated in me from being a little child. I remember when I went back to my faith, when I returned to my faith, I still was able to do my prayers because my mom had taught me them, when I was a little kid. So remembering that and being grateful that those lessons were taught then, that they still stuck with me throughout all those years, that was a huge blessing in and of itself. And it's one example. But I'm also grateful to my siblings for the role that they have played really in my life. Both my older siblings, who have paved the path for me, allowed me to have the opportunities that I've had in my life, and the lessons that they've taught me through their own life and otherwise. And also my other siblings for the support, the constant support that I get in anything and everything that I do. So I'm very, very blessed, thank God, to have a very loving and supportive family. I know not everybody has that, so may Allah grant everybody some kind of support in other ways if they don't have that through their own immediate family. And may Allah bless all of our families. But beyond my own immediate family, I would say there are a lot of different people that now, at least, where I am in my spiritual life, that I have and continue to learn from and look up to and respect and admire. There's so many, and if people don't know some of these names, hopefully you will look into them. Some of the ones that come to mind immediately, Sheikh Omar Suleiman and Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jengda, both from Dallas, Texas. They're both phenomenal. We have Ustada Yasmin Mugahed and her sister Dalia Mugahed, who are also inspirations in my life. Ustada Aisha Prime, Dr. Tamara Gray. There's, there's so many. My mind is just full of them. I'm like deciding which ones to pick. There's so many, and that's one of the blessings that we have of our day, because back in the day, people had to travel long and far and struggle for months to be able to get one piece of knowledge. And today, we have at our fingertips, literally at our fingertips, we have so much knowledge, with so many great scholars and leaders and people who are out there right now making a world of difference, both Muslim and non-Muslim. We've had Dr. Martin Luther King, for instance, of course, Malcolm X as a Muslim as well. There's so many people who have profoundly shaped the world around them, who are, like the coffee beans that I mentioned in my story. But also there are these people that we can learn from, that we can get inspiration from, that we can follow in their footsteps, that we can access, answers and get knowledge in a way that we've never been so blessed and lucky to do. We are also inundated with so much useless information, and that oftentimes is what many of us spend our time on. But really knowing that we live in a blessed time to have so many resources at our fingertips, even just having the full Quran. that wasn't something that existed at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. How blessed are we that we have the entirety of the Quran in a book that every single one of us can have in our homes. Like that in and of itself is a huge blessing. So there's so much access to power and knowledge. Knowledge is power. And then also access to resources and people who are profound game changers, including the many who have changed my own life.
Julia?
Yeah, so many follow-up questions, but let's start off with a question in terms of how about as a Muslim female in public, public eye, how do you feel is the Islamic communities or the Muslim communities around the United States and around the world are doing in representing Muslim women? Have you seen a change in recent years that there is more female representation, or are we still talking about women come through the back door of the masjid, and they're not to be heard or seen?
Well, we've definitely seen a change, and I'm grateful for that. And there's still a whole lot of work to be done. So that would be my quick answer. But specifically with the change, I mean, you see activists like Linda Sarsour, who are some of the most well-known American Muslims in our country. You see Representative Ilhan Omar, Representative Rashida Tlaib. We have now women leaders in some ways that are more vocal out there publicly than a lot of male Muslims even in a lot of ways. So we are seeing that. We are seeing a lot of mosques around the country also be better about focusing on women's issues and really helping promote women. And something that, like I think about is the fact that throughout Islamic history, Brother Waji talked about the golden age. Even beyond that, we have had profoundly capable, competent, and accomplished female scholars. And scholars who are active in their faith, in the deen, in the community. These are people who are not just scholars sitting at home, learning and benefiting for themselves or their children. They were actively out there helping shape society. They were issuing rulings. They were judges. They played all of these roles. And they also have played a significant role in transmitting hadith or sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which, as you know, are the second source of our religion after the Quran. So they have been active in all of that. In fact, there was a guy who decided to write a book about female scholars, and he thought he would have 25 women or so to write about. He ended up writing something, don't quote me on this, but it was like a 25-volume series on all the female scholars, because he found thousands of female scholars who were there in the public sphere throughout Islamic history. So that should be a source of strength for us, a source of inspiration for us, and knowing that there are so many female leaders, including as heads of state in many Muslim majority countries. We're Muslim women who are heads of state. We're still waiting for a female head of state here in our own country. So there is a lot to draw on, but we also have, unfortunately, a lot of work left to do, because what I see sometimes is people, Islam is perfect, Muslims are not. And that is very clear. We see that in the examples of so many, including in how people treat women. And as I often say to folks, that the mistreatment of women throughout the world exists, regardless of faith background. But then specifically with Islam, the mistreatment of women happens despite Islamic teachings and not because of Islamic teachings. That in fact, Islam came to challenge those forms of oppression, including the oppression of women and oppression of any vulnerable or marginalized groups in society. So that was a part of the mission of Islam, was to challenge all of that and really revolutionize society in profound ways. And we saw that happen back then. I think we need to embark on that kind of revolution today as well, not of, reforming Islam, because again, Islam is perfect, but reforming ourselves as Muslims, in particular, when it comes to how we treat women and how we empower and uplift women in our country here and around the world.
What are some of your recommendations? For the for Muslim communities, especially Muslim cultural mosques and Islamic centers, to include more women on their board and within their decision-making process. What are your some recommendations for that?
Yeah, so one of the things actually is what you hit on a nail on the head is like making sure more women are involved in the boards of different mosques or community organizations or cultural institutions. And not just, you can't just open up application and say, okay, apply to the board, whoever is welcome. We're not discriminating men or women, come on, apply. That's not enough. You have to actively reach out, do a proactive effort to reach out to the women that you see in the community, women who may be showing up to the mosque regularly or, to an institution or whatever, and say, hey, we value you. Would you be willing to join our board and help guide us in the work that we're doing, be a part of our effort? Like we need that kind of personal outreach because a lot of women, I'm not generalizing to all, of course, but a lot of women do need to be asked several times, the same way that women who run for office, they have to be asked a certain number of times before they will actually do it. The same thing is true for other aspects, whether other leadership positions. So even the board leadership, for example, of a mosque or a cultural institution, women should be reached out to proactively and asked repeatedly and make sure that their opinions, that their viewpoints are actually respected and welcomed and not just a name, hey, we need a woman to make sure we fill, the women's affairs secretary, for instance. Like that's not enough. We need to actually have women engaged in the process, knowing that if you educate and engage women, you are actually educating and engaging the whole of society through the kids and otherwise. Like we see this through studies that if you invest in a woman's education around the world, you're actually investing in society's education. So, mothers are teachers as well. So I do hope that people proactively reach out to women and get them engaged in those different leadership positions. And then also finding opportunities, when there are panel presentations or events, finding women speakers as well. The community at large needs to see more women speakers who are vocal, who are out there, who are representing the faith. And the more they see of that, the more that more women will be inspired, more young women will be inspired to also then engage. One of the best gifts right now is seeing people like Linda Sarsour or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, seeing them out there publicly, whether they have a hijab or not, because that's normalizing it for so many young girls and inspiring them and saying, sending them a clear message that even with your hijab, you can do whatever, you are non-stoppable. We should all have that mindset that we're unstoppable. Our hijab is not in any way something that prevents us from doing any good. And whether we wear hijab or not, that is not ultimately the defining trait of a Muslim, that we are Muslim, and seeing the diversity of Muslims, even among the women, and having them actively be part and equally, I would even say, be part of speaking engagements and events so that we can all benefit as a society.
Exactly. And also it's important for parents to see women who are in the public sphere, in public eye, so that they feel confident that their daughters and their sons can, be part of that big Muslim community. Brother Wajdi, you've been quiet. I've been asking all the questions. So
no, it's okay. I enjoy, I grew up with 9 sisters, Aneelah, so I know when to talk.
You're very blessed, mashallah.
And I am the youngest of the 9, so I'm very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having, so Aneelah, since we started MET, we had great founders, and we have integrated by design, our leadership, where 60% are women and not less than 40% are women, So, we struggle, to get that maximum woman representation on our board, but in our bylaws, 60% has to be women and not less than 40%. And we also and our Lady Khadija, our masjid is named after Lady Khadija. May Allah be pleased with her, the supporter, the great lady that influenced Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and brought the best, of her, to our as a role model. So we prayed together as the way that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed, that in the same hall, and women come from the front, doors, and in an open doors and loving doors and caring doors, and I think this question that Aneelah asked, that Juwairi asked, is a very important question. We want to continue that beautiful claiming of that beautiful narrative of the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the liberation of Muslim women, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has exemplified in a book written by a great scholar by name of Khalid Muhammad Khalid, Unfortunately, it's in Arabic. We're looking for people to translate it hopefully soon. He made 5 points, that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is ar-rahma mahujatuhu, that his mercy is his aspirations, and then and justice is his jurisprudence, his ruling, and then love is his natural instinct, and then also being dignified and rising to the challenge, that his skills, and then the challenges of the people or the problems of the people is his worship. Today we have struggle in our public square, in the Muslim community, the Muslim Ummah, the struggle, of those that have the money and those that don't have the money. For me, for 33 years in Portland, I have been part of the integration of a lot of refugees from the Afghan community to the Bosnian, to the Kurdish, to the Iraqis, to the Syrian recently, and so many others. And then with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, we have seen thousands of people being laid off, Muslims, Christian, Jews, and others, In the last 5 weeks, we have, made a food drive. 90% of the money came from the Muslim community. We are a loving and caring community. But the challenge is, where are the professional community? Why don't we, as Muslims professionals, integrate our skills to help the communities, the organizations, to integrate by design the success, so we can claim the love. Tariq Ramadan, in his book, What I Believe, in chapter 15, I don't know if you read that book or not, he defined 7 C's: compassion, confidence, caring, and so on. So we want our professional community to integrate by design, so we can balance, so we can create that balance, of wealth, balance of skills, balance of love, balance of caring. We have a lot of struggling single mothers that lost their spouses, in civil wars, in so many, in Africa, in Asia, and so many other places in Eastern Europe. What's your message to the professional community? How can we have many sacrifices like Aneelah's, Yes, we want to make money, but money is not the solution. How can we integrate our professional background for these medical doctors, for these lawyers, for these dentists, for these authors, for these poets? How can they become an added value to our public square in your perspective?
Yeah, so what I would say about how to integrate professionals into sort of, mosques and other cultural institutions that are Muslim is, of course, it's going to depend on the individuals, right? But overall, the Muslims who are professionals, as I was saying in my talk, you don't have to leave your professional pursuits. You should become the best doctor, the best lawyer, the best, politician, whatever you may be. Pursue those, but also make sure that you give back and that you bring the community with you. And the way you have to figure out the right balance for you, it may be that sometimes, because I was in the professional work world, I know how overwhelming it can be. I know how all-consuming it can be. So maybe that's the situation you're in, but guess what? You're making a lot of money. God is blessing you with money. You can use that money to support the causes, as Wajdi, as you were describing, that really pour your money towards that, and know that any amount of money you give in charity, you will never lose it. Like, it is always going to be, multiplied and increased, even in your own life here on earth. So it isn't just in the hereafter where you will get, multiple rewards for your charity, but even here on earth, that charity will never go to waste. It will always increase, whereas interest, as we are told in the Quran, riba, will decrease your wealth. So if you're worried about your wealth, or if you're pursuing wealth, one of the best things for you to do is to give in charity. So our professionals among the community need to know how important it is, how critical it is, especially at this day and age, where we have people who have a negative view of Islam and Muslims, in part because of an entire industry that is very well funded promoting anti-Muslim messages. We need to counter that with our own funding, with our own support of who Muslims and Islam, really are about. And places like MET and MAPS are doing exactly that. So being able to invest in these institutions, make sure they not only survive, but that they thrive, will be huge. And also not just in combating misconceptions, but also representing and reflecting our faith values in action. Putting those faith values into action in the world, in society, doing what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the best of you are those who bring benefit to society. And the way we do that is through these kinds of organizations and institutions. Yes, it's great when individuals, even professionals, go off and do individual acts of goodness. I highly encourage that too, of course. But another way to do it and have a bigger impact is when you pool your resources together and make a difference through an organization. And that's where MET and MAPS and other places come into play, because that way you don't have just individuals, and people might not even know that this was Muslims feeding the poor or not. But if you put them all together and you do it through these institutions, you are not only helping the people in need, not only having a bigger impact, but also helping shape society's views and perceptions. And while you're doing that, because if it was just about what other people think, I would say it doesn't matter. Like if it was just about what other people think about Islam or Muslims, it's like, okay, who cares? But the reality is that what other people think about Islam and Muslims is affecting our own communities, is affecting Muslim youth, is affecting, other Muslims who are now questioning their faith, not because of anything in the faith, but because they are seeing the attacks, the constant lies, the constant misinformation. So to protect our own youth, to protect our own future, to protect the, Islam in society, in the world in existence, and not just any version of Islam, but an actual understanding of Islam that is based on reality, based on the beautiful mercy of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the teachings of the Quran. To get that kind of sort of all of that into our society, we need to make sure we support the institutions, especially as professionals. I would actually say professionals are the backbone of making sure that institutions like this not just survive and thrive, but also thrive. So I really think professionals who are Muslim or people of any faith background, they really need to think about where are they putting their time and their money, because those are two things that we will be judged on Judgment Day, right? That we believe as Muslims that we'll be asked about that. What did you do with your time? What did you do with your money? And it seems like time and money are constantly in tension, that when you have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of money. And when you have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of time. So we need to figure out the way to balance those. And whatever we do have, make sure that we're constantly giving at least some of our time and at least some of our money to the good causes, including institutions like MET and MAPS and others that are out there doing the kind of work that we believe in.
I actually have a follow-up question to Brother Wesley's question, actually, that, we're talking about having Muslim professionals becoming involved in our Islamic Muslim communities, in our Islamic centers. But what about how do we combat the negativity within the Muslim community regarding the work that Muslim organizations are doing, and how does it affect the youth who is trying to get involved in Muslim community but gets discouraged by this? How would you help the youth and the people who are trying to do the positive?
Yeah, can you elaborate on what you mean by the negative views?
So basically, a lot of time in a lot of communities across the United States, Muslim communities are always looked at, they're not, involved in different aspects of Muslim lives. They are not, they're not hip, or they're not current with the current political affairs or this spectrum, and that just turns off a lot of Muslims, because they don't look at Muslim communities being more involved, and they do not, and they become negative about that. So how would you?
Yes. Thank you for the clarification. So yes, so the way that I would describe it is that a lot of people look at Muslim organizations and they're not active on the issues that they care about. They're not involved in justice issues. They're not, following what they themselves supposedly are preaching. So of course people get discouraged. And I'm not saying MET is that at all. But people see that with some Muslim organizations and institutions, and it's true to the extent that we need our organizations and institutions in our country of whatever religious background they might be to be involved in the issues of the day, to be relevant, and to be at the forefront of justice issues, because justice is such a strong value in Islam. We are told, we are commanded in the Quran to stand firmly for justice, even if it's against ourselves or our loved ones, whether rich or poor. This is a commandment. So if we as organizations are not fulfilling that command, and Muslim youth are seeing many other organizations at the forefront of, housing or healthcare or environmental justice or racism or all of these other issues, of course, they're going to be more drawn to that, because in our nature, in our fitrah, we have justice. So we need to build on that. We need to have our Muslim organizations and institutions get involved in these issues. And that's actually why one of the reasons I was so proud that MAPS did reach out to me. And again, the male leadership of the mosque came to me as a Muslim woman and asked me about my vision and my plan, and brought me on to essentially be one of the most public figures at MAPS. So I think that speaks volumes about that. And I want to see more of that kind of behavior across our country. But then also the work that we're doing through Amen specifically is in part all about fulfilling the justice mandate in Islam, because it's such a critical mandate. So we do need our organizations to get more involved in that way. But I would also say to the youth or the professionals who may have criticism of these Muslim organizations that they're not doing enough in terms of being relevant, in terms of justice issues, in terms of advocacy, whatever it may be, I would tell them, you have a duty and obligation then to step up and help create that change. Right? Like step up and become part of the leadership, be part of the change. Don't just sit back and complain. It's very easy to sit back and complain, or, keyboard warriors or anything else like that. That's very easy to do. And you actually lose points by just, criticizing others and not doing anything yourself. Instead, come and approach people like you all or in different organizations and say, I want to be a part of this organization. Or if you do see an organization that is doing that kind of work, join them, support them, and help them in that cause. So the more we have professionals and youth get involved in mosques and organizations across our country, the better we will be in actually doing the justice issues, getting involved in the relevant issues, and being more hip and more connected with technology and better able to benefit from all of these things that youth and professionals in particular can bring to our organizations. And we desperately need more professionals to join, more youth to join, to be active, to help really lead, because at the end of the day, they're the future of all of these organizations. So we need them to be involved now. I also want to add real quick about professionals. Beyond the work that they can do in supporting organizations now financially and by joining, hopefully through leadership positions, the other thing that's really important for professionals to know, and even for youth to know, is that they also are an ambassador of their faith in their corporate worlds, in their schools, in their colleges, on their campuses, whatever it may be. They are a representation, whether they choose to be or not. People will associate Islam with them and how they behave. So not only does that mean that we have to be sort of always doing our best to put into action our own faith values and really exemplifying what it means to be a good Muslim, but then also at the same time, taking opportunities to introduce things like, this past week, we did a presentation on Ramadan to T-Mobile. And the reason that happened is because one of the employees there, a corporate employee, she reached out to the diversity team at T-Mobile and said, hey, we really need some kind of program on Ramadan. And this was the first ever that they'd done this. And it was all due to this one individual Muslim. And she created a change that affected the entire, that reverberated through the whole company, and now hopefully will affect other companies as well. That's the opportunity we have today. And especially know that right now people are looking for diversity and inclusion and equity and representation. This is the lingo of the day. Take advantage of it and help promote it by doing your part to make sure that Muslims and Islam are part of that diversity education.
And also part of the American fabric, and it becomes normalized, not stigmatized, inshallah. Brother Wajdi.
I have a few questions. Aneelah, we have another 15 minutes, and we would love to continue for another 3 hours.
Yes.
With you. You are indeed my cup of coffee, Yemeni coffee, not any coffee. May Allah bless you, inshallah.
Virtual, and waiting until 8:30 before we could have the real thing.
Inshallah. Yeah. For those that ask about the two books, the first one is Insaniyat Muhammad, The Humanities of Muhammad, by Muhammad Khalid. It's in Arabic, and I hope, inshallah, one day will be in English. The other book, I received some text. It's called What I Believe by Tariq Ramadan. It's chapter 15. The 7 C's that you asked is called confidence, conscious, contribution, creativity, communication, and then compassion, and then contestation. So this is the 7 C's that Tariq Ramadan. Aneelah, we have, the new Muslims, a lot of our Muslim Ummah, the American Muslim Ummah, in our 50 states, doesn't have any program to integrate the new Muslims. The Quran defined them as the soft-hearted people. How do you today, when you are sitting with the MAPS executives, their boards, or we are sitting here at MIT, we tried, 20 years ago, and may Allah bless Sister Nihaz Suhail. She does sponsor the first Sunday of every month in our home. But yet here as an organization, we didn't integrate a service to integrate, by design, so not by chaos, but by design, how we can integrate the support of the new people, the new Muslims. They left their faith. It's a challenge, to live a faith, to live a family. Sometimes you get abandoned by your own family. So people, they don't understand Islam, that it is the same faith that Moses and Jesus and all these great prophets has prophesied. It is one faith and one identity. So how can we integrate services towards the new Muslims in your perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know it's something that we struggle with at MAPS as well. And we have had individual efforts, right? Like you mentioned, one person, we've had individuals at MAPS as well who have stepped up at various times to try to offer some kind of service to new Muslims. We currently have like a once a week halaqah, a weekly, sort of lesson for converts. So that's something that we do have. And I know that group that meets there as part of that weekly gathering, they've developed, friendships and relationships that may continue even outside of the once a week gathering. So that's a great place, but it is a real challenge. It is, especially the people who accept Islam during Ramadan, because we actually have a lot of people do that. One of the reasons they accept Islam at that time is they're feeling that sense of community. Again, not this year because this year is unique, but every other year, Ramadan is that time of the whole community coming together and really being involved in their worship, in breaking fast together, in this experience together of fasting dawn to sunset. So it's really a bonding experience, and people love the high and that community sense that they have. So they accept Islam at that time, and of course they believe in the message. They accept the Islam at that time, but then after Ramadan is over, it's such a different experience, and all of a sudden they're left alone. Or even people who throughout the year accept Islam, they have all the people in the mosque hug them, welcome them, congratulate them, all this stuff, all of the people there, and then the next day or the next week or the next month, they're left on their own. And like you said, oftentimes they don't have the support network. Sometimes they've had to defy their own parents, their own family. Sometimes their family members have cut them off even. So knowing the struggles that they've gone through, the sacrifices that they've gone through, and yet they are still choosing, recognizing that this is far greater than any individual relationship or family member even, or anything else, that this is such a gift. The gift of guidance is so great that they're willing to sacrifice all of that. But I feel like we as Muslims, whether we're born Muslims, already Muslims, or whether we're organizations that are Muslim organizations, we are honestly, I feel like we're failing in providing and addressing the needs of people like that, who really need that support network, who really need, I don't want to say hand-holding in any kind of negative way, but really that kind of like somebody there with them through the journey, especially considering all they've struggled. And then also, I see another problem, which is that people who are currently Muslim, or especially those who are born Muslim, they may have a sense, and this is so wrong, but they may have a sense of arrogance or superiority about themselves as Muslims because they were born Muslim versus somebody who just came to the faith yesterday, right? And I think that is so wrong and upside down. I think somebody who accepted Islam after doing their own research and really exploring faith and tradition and everything else, that person actually is likely more knowledgeable than somebody who just happens to have been born in a Muslim household that has not done any of their own analysis of like why they even are Muslim. This is a question that my brother I know asks, and I think it's such a powerful question. He asks people like, why are you Muslim? And if you don't have a good answer for that, then that's a very serious problem. So I feel like new Muslims are the ones who've really done that exploration. They've done that self-reflection. They've done that inner struggle, and they've come to a decision that they are in a much better place than often a lot of times our own Muslims who are born into a Muslim household. So what we really need to do is not only provide a space for them to be able to get their nourishment and their learning and support and everything, but also integrate them in our other programs so that we can benefit from what they bring, because they bring a fire, the same kind of fire that I had upon my spiritual transformation. I had essentially a fire in my heart. Like I was passionate. that's what I feel like a lot of people who accept Islam, are converts to Islam, they bring that same kind of fire, that passion, that this is new to them and they are gung-ho about it. We need to try to take advantage of that, incorporate them into the programs, try to have a weekly program for converts that they can benefit from, try to create opportunities, especially during Ramadan, to connect them to different families so that they can have some kind of, maybe even a virtual iftar now, but certainly, actual iftars in the past. Make sure you keep an eye out for them. And if you see people, and this is true about anybody in our community, not just converts, but especially for converts, if you see them at the mosque and they're alone, or they're eating alone or anything else like that, do what our faith commands us to do and go and include them and reach out to them and be a good representation of our own faith values. Go and show them love and include them and connect them and introduce them to the friends so that they can also build community and be part of our community and also contribute to our community in really powerful ways.
Julia, you have questions or I can continue?
You can continue, Brother Wajdi. I've been asking too many.
Okay. We are coming to the last two questions that is in our mind. And
okay.
Aneelah, the community, a multi-racial, multi-ethnic community. In MET here, we have over 45 ethnic groups, over 72 languages, different school of thought, different understanding, different commitment, in terms of giving, and not giving the money, giving the time and the energy and the understanding. Everybody looking for their own, which is okay. That's a normal behavior. But with the different school of thoughts and challenges, today, how can you heal and unify and make people understand the big picture that we have to define our road map of success? We cannot fail as a Muslim community. We have to integrate everything that is necessary. In your perspective, being in and out of the community, outside the community, now inside the community.
Yeah, I would say that I would go back to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad himself, peace be upon him, when it comes to addressing any of these divisions. And I would go back to the Quran. The Quran itself, in the Quran, God tells us to not divide into sects. That's number one. So we're not supposed to be, oh, this person thinks that school of thought, this person thinks that school of thought, or this, these are not intended to be divisions. We should look at them as diversity, and that diversity allows for difference in approach in a lot of different ways. And that's a good thing, and that's okay. Like, it's part of the blessing that we do have these different, diversity of thought within the different schools. And we should appreciate that as a blessing. In fact, the leaders of the 4 schools themselves did respect each other and did, uphold the positions of each other at times as well, recognizing that it's part of, these are all learned scholars that we're following. So we shouldn't allow those kinds of differences in school of thought to divide us. We should not be creating different sects, S-E-C-T-S, right? We should not be allowing for that to happen. And then importantly, what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in his final sermon as one of the most important messages that he left humanity with was this message, this anti-racist message. Because we do see that with people of different backgrounds. And this is true not just about race, it's about ethnic origin, it's about, documentation status, language speaking abilities, any tribalism, any of those things. This is a message that goes against all of that, because he specifically said that an Arab does not have superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have superiority over an Arab, that a white does not have superiority over black, nor does a black have superiority over white, except by piety and good deeds. That's the true measure, is somebody's righteousness, their piety and their good deeds. And at the end of the day, we cannot see people's piety. We cannot see people's good deeds. You may not know about the good deeds people are doing. It's all within our hearts, and only God can see. So really only God can judge us. And we as human beings, our duty is to race to do good deeds. Compete in doing good. That's what the Quran tells us to do. We're supposed to be competing to do good and leave those divisions, those differences aside. God will ultimately judge us. God is, God knows best. What we say is Allahu Alam, like God knows, if there's a difference of opinion, okay, you do you, I'm going to do what I'm doing. God knows best. But ultimately we should be uniting on the more important values of, of Tawheed, of monotheism. of our beloved prophet, peace be upon him, of the values that we are contributing to society, that are benefiting society. That's what we should be uniting on. That's what we need to be emphasizing, because if we have these divisions within ourselves, it is very easy, as is happening right now, for our opponents, our haters, to further take advantage of those differences and create wholesale divisions. And really, the community crumbles from within. We cannot allow that, especially when we are being attacked constantly from the outside. We need to unify as a community. We need to be the very best of what our faith teaches us and be those examples for other Muslims in the country, and also for anybody of whatever faith background. We need to be the best examples, best Americans that we can possibly be during this time of crisis and always. So that's what I would say is our focus needs to be on what the Quran and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us about. And if we make that our focus, like if we have, an orientation towards that, we recognize that we need to understand that the differences, we got to let those go. This is not the time, you can sit down at some point and, hash out the different theological differences that people might have. But ultimately, we all believe in the Quran. We all believe in God. We all believe in Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We're all trying to do good. We are trying to do our prayers and our fasting and all of these things, giving in charity. How do we help develop Americans who are Muslim, who are, living the best examples of themselves? That should be our focus right now, because these divisions and this tribalism or anything else like that will definitely turn away our youth. They will see that and they will run from it. And
right.
we're doing a huge disservice.
Yes, exactly. Because right here, I know we are running out of time. Thank you so much. But just want to interject that, we are looking at Muslim youth that, especially the second generation, they're American. They're not thinking of themselves as Pakistani or Afghan or Arab. They're thinking of themselves as American, and we want them to be included in our decision making, into our communities, and it's very important. Thank you so much, Brother Wajdi.
Yeah, Aneelah, the Afghan story, the Afghan immigrant story in our beautiful America. There is great successful stories in the Afghan community. There is great challenges in the Afghan community. But today, in my 33 years in Portland, Oregon, looking at the Afghan community and observing as an outsider, we see a lot of good stories. We see Ustada Aneelah Afzali, a great attorney. We see Dr. Anita Afzali, a great GI physician. We see Khalid Husseini, great author. Tamim Ansari, another great author. Ustada Hussein Mujaddidi, a social worker from the Bay Area. Ustada Muslima Permol, a great scholar from San Diego. We see Salah Ansari here in Portland, Oregon, the president of the Lutheran Community Services. We see so many stories. Qais, your brother, an IT successful young man. Imam Zia, the founder of MySpace or Makerspace in Virginia. We see so many Afghans today, very successful story. Mishar Rizai here from Portland, the Zamzam water, founded by Afghans and their philanthropical work. How can we have a strong Afghan community that will heal Afghanistan today? The American Afghan community can heal Afghanistan today with all its, tribal backgrounds, with all its school of thoughts and so on. Don't you think that we have a moral and ethical obligation as an Afghan leaders, to bring stability to Afghanistan today after 40 years of struggle?
I definitely think we have a moral, religious, ethical obligation to do our part in helping build a better community, both here in our own country and also abroad, including in Afghanistan. I think Afghans in particular have an obligation to sort of our homeland or our ethnic origin, if you're a second or third generation Afghan here. So absolutely, I think there's that moral duty. I think it ties to what I was saying before, that we cannot allow the kinds of differences, whether tribal, racial, ethnic, any of those kinds of differences, they cannot be getting in the way of us doing good. And one of the best things that we can do for Afghanistan, other than, of course, donating to support the people on the ground who are helping those in need, because unfortunately, Afghanistan has been in this turmoil of war for 4 decades now. And unfortunately, it's not ending. And we've seen regime after regime and different president after different president continue to promote policies that really have hurt the country, that have devastated the country. And we have Americans who've said things that are just completely dehumanizing. I remember hearing things even on radio, and even today, sometimes you hear horrible comments of things like they want to blow Afghanistan back to the Stone Age. Well, it's already been done by the Soviet invasion, and of course the bombings that we've done as well as a country. So there's a lot that has been done that's wrong with Afghanistan, that has been done to Afghanistan. We do need to support the forces for peace on the ground, both the Afghan people, and make sure we support their own leadership and not necessarily, regime change or installing puppet governments by outside forces. So we need to be very active politically in speaking with our representatives and calling for the right action politically with a place like Afghanistan or anywhere else, whether it's Yemen, whether it's Syria, whether it's Palestine, wherever it may be. We do need to be active. I do think we have an obligation to be active on those issues and show that we care about them. We cannot just detach ourselves from what's happening to other parts of the world. And especially as Muslims, we're taught that we're like a ummah, we're like one body. Our community, the Muslim community, is like one body. If one part is hurting, then the other will feel it. So we might not directly feel it, but it certainly affects us and impacts us as Muslims even here today. So we need to be conscious, politically aware, and politically active on these issues. We also have to do our job here in the US. And what I mean by that is one of the best gifts that we can give the rest of the Muslim world, whether in Afghanistan or any other country for that matter, is by showing an example of, like Juwaria, you talked about the American Muslim, really defining an American Muslim and showing the very best of what America could be, the aspirational values of America and our own Muslim values, showing that and being an example, not just for Americans, all Americans, but also for the entire Muslim world that look at this American Muslim concept, this idea of Muslims of all faith backgrounds coming together, because we are a microcosm of the larger Muslim world. And we do have the diversity of ethnicities and races and difference of thought and age and generation, everything else. We have that kind of beautiful diversity. And if we can succeed and show a microcosm of what the rest of the Muslim world can be like, I think we're doing a huge value and benefit for all of the Muslim world as well as all of Americans.
Aneelah, we are very blessed to have you.
Likewise.
Before we give you the final closing remarks, I just want to remind everybody, this is our dear beloved Ustada Aneelah Afzali, the Executive Director of AMEN, American Muslim Empowerment Network. And she lives in Seattle, but she's an Oregonian. She's a Portlander, and we claim her that. Aneelah, with this, you have been named the most influential lady in Seattle area. Being influential, that's a very dignified title, but it's also a responsible, fully loaded title. Are you planning to run for an office to be a congresswoman, Aneelah, or Governor Aneelah?
So let me clarify a few things first. It's the 2017, one of the most influential, not the most, and it was in 2017, number one. Number two, I am far from any kind of scholar or knowledgeable person, so I'm not an ustada. I am simply your sister and your fellow seeker in knowledge. But with those clarifications on the question about running for office, absolutely not. I have no desire to do that. As I said, I'm already in public far more than I want to be because I am an introvert, and for a politician in particular, that's simply not the kind of lifestyle that I want. I'd rather be behind the scenes advocating for the issues that matter and really helping push politicians to do what's right, and then also help inspire, build leaders who can be others who run for office. But I myself have absolutely zero political ambitions. But thank you for asking, and heck no.
Yeah. For our audience, please support MET, metpdx.org. We are we canceled our fundraiser. We need your support and love. Aneelah, happy Mother's Day to all our mothers. Today I'm celebrating 19 years of my mother departing from, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless her soul. Mother's Day always remind me of her, and every time she's in my mind, may Allah bless all the mothers and their sacrifices. And to our youth that are listening, take care of your moms, take care of your sisters, take care of your, your loved ones. May Allah bless you, because sometimes, there'll be a time that you long for them. So to our mothers, may Allah bless you all the time, and may Allah reward you.
Amen.
Your closing remarks, Aneelah.
Oh, I just want to say thank you so much to MET, to you, Brother Wajdi, to Sister Juwaria, to all the folks who joined us on this call, for listening to both my story and whatever words of inspiration I might have provided. Of course, any good that I did share is directly due to God's grace and mercy. So alhamdulillah, all thanks and praise is due to God. And any of the shortcomings in my responses and anything I said, please forgive me for any mistakes or shortcomings. May Allah forgive me as well. I look forward to seeing many more of especially the MET youth getting involved in the community. And I do look forward to further developing this partnership that we've talked about before, Wajdi, between MAPS and MET, and really building some kind of opportunity for youth to get trained in public speaking, to do what I do, to do what others do, to really become the best representatives for our community and the best kinds of Muslims and human beings that they can be, because ultimately that's what all religion teaches us. It teaches us to be better human beings. And if our religion is not doing that, then we're falling short significantly. So let's help each other be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And it's such an honor to get to speak to all of you. Thank you for listening. May Allah bless and reward all of you during this beautiful, blessed month. And hopefully none of us waste any opportunities of gaining the good of this month. And thank you again, MET, for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Sister Aneelah. It was great to have you. And everybody who is watching, this is first episode of the series of Muslim Americans in the public square. And we will have the schedule up for next week later, inshallah. Thank you, Aneelah. Thank you, Brother Wajdi. Great talking to you. Assalamu alaikum.
And thank you, Juwaria. Thank you, Sahar and Jawad, for your support, behind the scene. May Allah bless you and reward you. Our next episode is this coming Tuesday with Dr. Al Barkuli. Al Barkuli is the Chief Executive Officer of David Evans, one of the largest structure civil engineering firm in the Northwest. Al will be tuned at 6 o'clock this Tuesday with teacher Jawad Khan. May Allah bless you all, and may Allah bless you, Aneelah and Juwaria and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.